And for lesson 3, you should go ahead and open up 2 tabs, one for bubble 1 and one for bubble 2 is fine. And a quick reminder for calendar stuff, just so you are aware, the calendar looks like this in general. And as I clean this up, things on the horizon, I am going to be out the first 2 days next week, okay? And you will have stuff to do. Okay, I'll have basic recordings and explanations for the other project from lesson 3, the Netflix situation, the one Netflix Navigator project. Today on this one, we're going to do Ramen radar. And there'll also be one for lesson 5, 6, and 7. And you'll need to do those while I'm not here. There'll be a replay, and there's no reason not to have everything done when I see you again on next Friday, right? Which is Create Task Day. Please be here. It's important. Okay, so let's look at our challenge for today, which is lesson 3 ramen rating app. And so, oh no, are we having internet stuff? Excellent. Lovely. First, let's take a look at the finished app. All right, we've got a few buttons up at the top that I personally enjoy the functionality of having things hide and unhide, if you will. And that does this. So it hides and shows the different lists based on what button you've chosen, and has an output, and has a nice accessibility feature here that changes the sizes of all the font sizes of all the text inputs. Okay, so let's take a look at bubble 2 and see what we've actually got. So this code, the amount of code that is already here, might seem intimidating, considering we already have 200 lines of code counting the white space, but it's still a fair amount. And if you scroll through this cleanly, you'll see somewhere around line 100, or no, exactly, I haven't changed anything, which goes for the rest of this explanation, is if you stick closely with the lines that I use, your lines will match, because you start with the same thing I start with, so should be fine. There is one exception, and that is later on, we need to uncomment a couple of text strings that I'll show you how to do that. We're just going to go into text mode and delete the / in order to activate these 2 lines. These 2 lines are comments technically, but they aren't comments for the sake of explaining something. They're comments for the sake of deactivating that line of code temporarily. And so see what we've already got. We've got 4 lists at the top. We know it's it's assigned as a variable, but there's a return function called create list that is all the way at the bottom. We don't need to change anything to it. It already, in theory, works. And all it is, I'm dubious about the value of the function, but all it's doing is replacing a get column. It's making this return function turn into a get column command based on whatever string it sends it as the parameter, which we could have just done get column. Now, as an aside, not an aside, a pre-debugging, last period we're having significant issues with the table's loading. So before we go any farther, or further, I want you to console log the various lists to see if anything comes out. Okay, varieties works. Countries. I wonder if AppLab was just broken. It's quite possible. Yeah. Okay, so things seem to be working, and we can keep that as it is. I do want you to actually console log at least one of the lists from directly above and make sure you have something come out. If you have undefined, it means we're still having technical issues on the back end. Back end meaning code.org's end. The side the user sees is the front end. The server is the back. The term would be client side or server side, which is front end or back end. Either way, we've got our full data set lists, which are coming from the list called Ramen rating, which I don't know why it is that the actual list is called Ramen ratings, but just don't change anything. Oh my gosh, please don't break anything. Like I said, please don't change anything. That may have been one of the issues from before, but we're good. Okay, and then this is a basic filtered app or filtered program that should look familiar. We've got some empty filtered lists provided for us. We've got a couple other general variables set up. One that's going to collect the output text, one for keeping track of average stars of our output, and then one for holding user choice. Then we have these get properties, and these get properties are getting the font size of the various areas, and that is used in our first function that we have to write, which is adjust font size. Okay, that's the only place they're used. These original, these output original, whatever. And that's the first function we're gonna do. But we do already have the event handlers to make the different drop downs appear or hide and show, which is nice that they gave that to us for free. And then we have event handlers for the various drop downs, which will probably break it now if you run it, but they are there, and you don't need to change them until much later when we get rid of when we include that comment from step 4. And then the same thing for, okay, all 3 drop downs, and the slider is another user event or an event handler for a user interface. And that's the first one we're going to deal with. It's called step 1. Now, the different steps correspond to the different bubbles, but for each one, you need to go and choose Ramen rating part 3, Ramen rating part 4. It's all the same workspace. The only difference is up at the top where it says instructions, it has the instructions for step 2 or step 3 or step whatever, but all the comments are all the same anyway. So we're just going to stay in bubble 2, and we still have the example up, but I don't think the example is going to be that much use to us. We know what it's supposed to do. So let's go and solve the adjust font size function. Okay, here we are at line 106 currently, and adjust font size is expecting 2 parameters. One is the original size, and the other is our multiplier, which up here we'll recall it each time for output, for the font size of the output, it's getting the original font size from the get property up there, and the same thing for button and drop down sizes. And we're also sending the multiplier, which is the result of the slider divided by 5. The only reason it's divided by 5 is the slider can only output whole numbers, and we don't want the output to be like 10 times whatever font size it is. And we are going to make sure this does a thing. Let's write the function first, then we'll test it. Okay, so adjust font size. First thing we have to do is multiply the two arguments together. So multiplier is going to be a small number. In fact, let's go ahead and do a console log just to see what sort of numbers we're working with. It will make it a lot easier. Please do this to make sure that it works. We are going to do, we're going to console log multiplier, or font multiplier, one of the output. Actually, you know what? This isn't going to work yet. Hang off on this. It's not going to work because the function doesn't work yet. So the function, first thing we have to do is multiply the two arguments together. I guess, parameter, which is multiplier and original size, and we're going to assign it to result. So we can just go into the result thing and do result gets original size times multiplier. Original size times, okay, so this is where we're going to console log it here in a second. Okay, so result is whatever the original size of the text is, times whatever multiplier comes in, and it gets assigned to result. And we are going to check, we're going to console log all three of these, and we'll do them in order. Original size, multiplier, and result. Let's console log all of them. And all of these are inside of the adjust font size function, which only gets called when we move the slider. So in order for it to happen, we need to actually slide something. Okay, so we slide it and it gets called a bunch of times because it's for a bunch of functions. But if we just look at the first one, we can see that the first original size is 11. Its multiplier is 1.2, which means its output is 13.2. It changes the font. It will end up changing the font size to that. But we have another thing. It wants us to make sure that the result never goes above 19, which you can see very quickly as I scroll up. We can get the total font size to be above 19 pretty easily, and that will, in this case, make the fonts too big for their area. So that is what this function is supposed to do. It's, and I'm going to get rid of these console logs. It's checking if our result ever gets above 19, it's going to lock it in at 19. It's going to switch it back to 19. So if result is greater than, it's technically asking greater than or equal to 20, which is the same thing as 19, but greater than or equal to 20, then we want to switch it back, switch result, right there. If result is greater than 20, set result back to 19. And then we want to return result. And this should actually do a thing at this point. And there we go. So that changes that. And we should have, it should also work for those things. And you can see here, so sliders, first we should take a look at what sliders actually have. Sliders have a few unique properties. They have the range of the slider, the lowest number, or what the slider represents or returns when the slider is all the way to the left is the min value. The value when it's all the way to the right is the max. And step size is just the intervals, like how often it clicks. And starting value. So if you had it start at 7, it would start in the middle, which would be strange because it doesn't get called until it slides. So we'll leave it at 5. But So that's how that is happening. Okay, step 1 done. Great. Step 2. So step 2, here we are going to write our filter functions, which should feel very familiar. And this one for filter by country is mostly written for us. And it is going to look very similar to the other functions that there's no bones for yet, but they're going to be essentially the same. So let's write one of them, and I'll give you a head start on the other ones. So for any filter function, it's going to be the same thing. We need to first wipe our filtered lists, which are these lists right here, and I'm going to copy them, but make sure that when we paste them, you need to switch to text mode and delete VAR from the ones we paste from these. So copying those 4 filtered lists down here to line like 125, but going into text mode and delete VAR from each one. If you don't do that, it won't work. You can, of course, also, if you wanted to, bring in blocks and do, filtered whatever, gets an empty list, and do it that way. But I think the way I showed you was a little bit easier. I'm not going to clean up the white space in this, even though it's bothering me a lot. But I want to make it easier for you to keep track of the lines that I'm working with. Okay, so any filter function, we are wiping the filtered lists, and we're going to go through the entire any list. They are using varieties.length as the number of times we're going to loop, which it's just one of the data lists. You can use any one of the data lists in order to do your looping, but I'm actually going to switch it to countries because that's the list that we're actually checking, and I think it makes more sense. Now, changing that does absolutely nothing, assuming you spell it correctly. And, but like I said, I think it makes more sense. So we're going to go to every item in the countries list, and we are already receiving the user's input into the parameter, which if we go up to country dropdown, which is the function we're dealing with, country dropdown, user choice is the get text from the country dropdown, and that's what's going to be sent to us when we send to the other function when it's called. So country is the user's choice. That's what we're going to use to check. If the country we're checking, which is countries index I, if it double equals country, it's a match. Now, what happens if it's a match? We want to append whatever's in every row at, or in every list at the same row. So if we are searching for Indonesia, every time we get a match in the Indonesia list, we want whatever's in the stars list to get added to filter stars. We want whatever's in the main style list to get added to filter style list, whatever's, and so on. So, and again, we've done this a bunch. Hopefully that sounds familiar. So we're going to do append item. The lists we're going to append to are all of the filtered lists. And so we're going to append something to filtered varieties, something to filtered countries, something to filtered styles, and something to filtered stars if we get a match. And the thing we're going to append is, let me make sure I've got the spellings correctly. Varieties, countries, styles, and stars are the main lists. So for each one, for varieties, filtered variety is going to get whatever's in varieties at index I. Filtered countries is going to get whatever's in countries at index I. Filtered styles is going to get whatever's in styles at index I. and filtered stars is going to get whatever's in stars at index I. Okay. Please do monitor like the yellow triangle warnings when you are programming, because it will give you some good sort of pre-debugging hints, like something hasn't been declared yet, or you've defined this but you're not using it. That sort of thing is a huge hint moving forward. Filter by style. Filter by country. Oh, we haven't written this. All right, and so this filter by country function, let's go up to where it's actually used, which is in the country dropdown event handler. We call filter by country. It gets assigned or gets sent user choice, which is the country, which after filter runs, all those filter lists will be populated with matches. We don't have average stars written yet. That's one of the last things we do, where it will allow us to uncomment or allow us to use this extra line of text in our output. But for now, it's not doing anything, which is fine. The dropdown sets up the output text with the results, and it then sets the output text to output text. So this should work for at least one of the things. So we go to place and choose a country, and we get an output. And we do another one, and we get an output. This is working remarkably well. First period was, I don't know if the internet was just slow everywhere, but it took forever. And it is slowing down. That's not, oh no, it's fine. Okay, so filter by country works. Excellent. I'm not sure if it makes a difference, but I have noticed that making sure that when you're done testing it to hit reset, I do think there is some benefit in that as far as getting your app lab to run quicker. Although that might just be, bro science of, small sample size type of thing. Okay, so filter by country works. We need to write an equivalent function that's going to look very similar for each of the other two filtering needs, which I think they missed an opportunity to write a single generalized function that would work for all three of these filterings, but they haven't, which we might do at the end. We'll probably leave it fine. There is going to be an extension for those of you who do like to go ahead. The extension will be changing this round to tenths function to allow it to round to any number of decimal places. And while I think of it, we'll get to that again at the end. So we have we've got one of the functions done, the filter by country, here on line 122. And then I've got the two other functions. First one is called filter by style. And it receives a parameter called style. And the other one is called filter by stars. And it's receiving a parameter called star. Okay, filter, they're both going to look very similar. Filter by style is going to be almost identical to the filter by country, and filter by stars is only slightly different than that. So I'll give you a head start on start with filter by style. And like I said, it's going to be almost identical to filter by country. At least syntax wise. So go ahead and do that. What's up? No, there are people among us who will take a cardboard pass and not bring it back. And okay. Who else am I missing? Okay, so let's do filter by style. Okay, filter by style is going to have the same situation where we're going to wipe all of the filtered lists. And once they're wiped, we can go ahead and do a loop. The number of times we're going to do a loop is the length of the main data list, which is styles.length. Again, it could have been varieties.length. And every time we go to an item in styles, we want to check if the style we're checking, which is styles index I, double equals the style the user has chosen, which is style. And if it's a match, we want to append to all of our lists, whatever is in the row we're looking at. So it's the same as the other append items. Let's run it. Choose style. We'll choose tray. And there we go. Excuse me. We get some output. And just to double check the previous things, let's make sure a slider works. It does seem to work, and displays still work. Great. Okay, so the last filter function to write is filter by stars. I'll give you even more time to take a shot at that. It's going to look similar to the other ones, except with a different conditional statement. That we are looking for an output that is all of the results from the stars list that are equal to or greater than the inputs, than the parameter. That's the hint you get. Of course, we'll go over it momentarily, but this is this one and go. Huh. Okay, filter by stars. Like I said, is going to look very familiar. Any of the filter functions. We are going to do, we're going to wipe the filtered lists, making sure, again, no var inside of functions. We're going to do a loop. And how many times we're going to loop? How about stars.length number of times? Making sure it's stars.length because stars is our long list. Star is the parameter that's coming in, which from above, if you recall, is the user's input from the dropdown. And every time we check something in the stars list, we are going to, or every time we go to one of the items in the stars list, we're going to check. And if the item from stars that we're checking, which is stars index I, double equals the user's input, which is star. And if it's a match, then we want to append all the items. And let's check. Stars. Oh, wait, no, never mind. I spaced out. It's not if stars index I is equal to star. We want to see, well, what are we checking? If the thing we're looking at is greater than or equal to the thing requested, which is, why does it make a weird space there? There we go. So stars index I is the one we're checking as we go through the full stars list. Star is the user's input. We want to keep stars that are whatever the user had or higher. So if stars index I is greater than or equal to what the user wants, throw it on the append list. So let's go here and we go like this. And there are 801 varieties with a rating of 4 or higher. And this will increase, of course, as you go lower and lower. Oh, you know what? I think I know the difference of the two lists. Why there's a plural. I just solved something. I'll check it later. Why not learn a thing? So this list that we're using, or this table that we're using, Ramen rating, is not available from the data library. It's a custom list. And I'm thinking, let's see here. This list is the varieties.length number of items. This is just a test just for listening. When somebody comes back, there's already like 5 people. So there are how many people? I mean, how many rows? There are 1,500 rows in this list. If we go to Ramen ratings and we bring in, let's console log. Let's go here. Rating we'll just do the get column thing of Ramen ratings from any one of the columns. And let's do ratings.length. If this is over 1,500, I know why. Yes. Okay. So there are 4,627 rows in Ramen ratings. They made a custom list that was a third as long because AppLab takes a long time to load things. They made a one that was truncated, which is great. That super long lists take out time to deal with. Okay, so that makes way more sense now. First period is going to be so excited to know why we had so much trouble. So we have all the drop downs doing things. The slider does a thing, filter by country, filter by style, filter by stars. That's step 1, 2, and 3, and three times. Step 4, average. We want to write a function that will average an entire list. This function is only used, no, it is used anytime that, well, anywhere it's called, but, oh yeah. So average stars is the variable. and it's getting the result of our average function, sending it a list, whatever list is exists at that time, and it's used in these output text. So right now, before we get going any farther, switch to text mode, and on line 47, delete the 2 slash marks. On line 59, delete the 2 slash marks. And on line 71, delete the 2 slash marks. So when you're done, you will have output text twice in each of them, in each of the drop-down event handlers. Okay, it won't work if you don't. What's up? It's the line numbers, if you're the same, are 47, 59, and 68, but, or wait, 71. But you can see in the drop downs, there's something that says step 4. It's the one right below it. This one says step 4. It's the one right below it. Country's drop down doesn't have the step 4 comment, but either way, in all 3 of your drop down event handlers, country, style, and stars, you should have 2 lines that are assigning output text. And the way they're working is this first one in each of them is our basic line that was there already. And the second one adds to the end of it. So output text gets whatever it is as the result of the first line and some other things, like the average stars result, which average stars is the variable that's getting the result of the average function, which is being sent to list. So let's go down and solve the average function, the function named average, which is all the way down here on 193. And it's receiving a parameter called list. All right. It is receiving a list, and for the duration of the function, anywhere you use the word list will get assigned that list. All right. The parameter name is not syntax. It could be named anything you want, so long as that's what you use in the inside of the function. Okay, so we've got a few expo instructions here that I think you can probably do on your own, and I'll give you a head start. First, we need a variable called sum, set it to 0, loop through the entire, traverse means loop through the entire list and add each item to the total. So you have a total of every item in the list. Then you need another variable called mean, and mean will be the average of sum divided by however many items are in the list.length. Then we have a round to 10. Well, make it to there, and then we'll talk about the round to tenths thing. And that's like just up to creating the average thing. We've done that before. Ready, go. Okie dokie. All right, so just following the directions precisely, let's create a variable. We'll call it sum, and we'll set it to 0. We'll give it the value of 0 because every time we run average, we want this to be reset. Otherwise, it's not going to be accurate. Then we're going to loop through whatever the list is that we get, which will be, we want to do a loop list.length number of times. And again, it's only the word list because that's the name of our parameter. If we called the list, if we called the parameter ASDF, we could do ASDF.length. I know I say list.length number of times, and I usually just mean the name of the list.length, but here it is literally list.length. And we're going to go through the entire list that is given to us, or given to this function. And every time we get to the list, sum, our counting, not our totaling variable, sum is going to get whatever it already has plus the thing we're looking at, which is list index I. And when we're done, sum, the variable sum, will have the value of every item in the list added together. We want the average, so we're going to make a new variable called mean, and mean is going to be our total number divided by however many items are in the list. All right, and so we get we already have a function called round to tenths that receives a parameter, a number, and that parameter is named number, and it returns whatever was sent to it rounded to tenths, doing our little trick of multiplying a number by 10, rounding it, and then dividing it by 10 will cut off any decimal to its tenths. And it we are going to change it so that it can work for any number of decimal places. And so we need to use the round to tenths. We are going to reassign mean to the result of calling the return function. So the function's name is round to tenths, and the value we're sending it is mean. Okay, mean, that, you know, the long decimal form of the average, that's the mean is the average, is going to get whatever it used to be rounded to tenths, because that's what's going to be returned. And then we actually just need to return it, return mean. Now, a lot of these lines could be combined. If you have a variable used a single time, and then right there, you technically could just put it in there and it would work the same way, but we are spreading it out a little bit to make sure you understand what's actually happening, hopefully. And so now we hit run, and those extra lines of text have been added to our text output from before, where it says, okay, there are whatever ratings from Vietnam with an average rating of 3.6 stars. We didn't have the average rating text there before. And hold on. What happens if we do... I just want to check something. Don't do this yet. Or don't do this at all. I want to change average stars. Average stars is going to get... never mind. It wouldn't have worked. I'm just running in my head before I even test it. Okay, so we have our average star output. That's good. The only other thing that we need to write is the percent of total function. The percent of total function is only used in the stars dropdown. And if we look at the various dropdowns, there are, those are the buttons. Countries dropdown, it runs the average star thing, and that gets put into this added concatenating. The styles dropdown does the same thing. It runs the average function, and average stars is put into that added concatenating. And the stars dropdown has, it doesn't have average, because that's what we're actually putting in. It has percent of total. Okay, which right now, if you've already uncommented or commented back in all the output text, if we go to stars, it should have an undefined for that extra line once it filters. Yeah, there we go. So the number represents a undefined percent because percent of total doesn't work yet of all the varieties included in the data set. Okay, so we need to make percent of total work so that the output for the stars dropdown has that information where 13.2 or higher represents a whatever percentage. There actually, apropos of nothing, I do like the double new line command. I almost never see that, but it does seem to use this space effectively. Just trying to give you more graphic design tools to make your stuff look the way you want it to look, but that's not super programming. Okay, so percent of total is our function. It receives a list, and this function is going to be written in a semi-generalized way because it's going to always be percent of this table, however many rows are in the table. Where if we were writing it super generalized, we would send it a filtered list and a total list, and that would give us our percentage. But we are going to use one of the main data tables to figure out percent. So we're going to use the length of the argument pass. So percent is going to get the length of the list.length, because wow, having a stroke here. The length, oh wait, no, don't click it off. We've got more stuff to add there. The length of the list plus, and in fact, I'm going to leave this here for a second. Sorry, hold on. Don't do this yet. The length of the list, which is list.length, of course, plus, and what, oh no, not plus. What are we doing here? We're percenting. So it's divided by, and if we look up at what is actually being sent when we call stars dropdown, it's sending filtered stars, which is one of the filtered lists. And again, the filtered list will always be the same length because of the way we wrote it. It's essentially just asking, of those returned, what percent do those make up out of all of them? So percent is going to be however many items are in the filtered list divided by however many items there are, which is any one of the main lists, its length property, like stars.length, country.length, styles.length, or varieties.length. They're all going to be the same length. So it's how many are in the filtered divided by how many there are total. That will be a decimal. And we need to make it not a decimal. So we're going to reassign percent to itself rounded. Oh, no, wait, no. Itself times 100. Percent gets percent times 100. If it's typing, percent gets percent times 100. And we want to return percent. Now we run it, and we should get an output when we choose stars. Yeah, 85.8. One of these is super long, 53.4, 92.6. Wow, look at that. Okay. How is it possible that we're dividing two medium-sized whole numbers and ending up with a result of 5.3 or 53.4 0.00000006? Does anyone know how that's happening? Okay, so computers do math by a thing called floating point math. and it's mildly, let's to put it mildly, that's mildly inaccurate. And computers know that if you're somewhere close to whatever number to round it, but I think that's what's happening here. That is a ridiculously small decimal for it to be anything else. Anyway, so we still want it to round, and this is how we are going to do that. All right, so percent works, and we could do the percent gets itself, percent gets, we're going to change this in a second. Percent gets the round the tenths of itself. And we'll double check. This is 4 stars. We want to see if 4 stars gets, not that. I want round to 10, round to tenths of percent, which is that variable, and return percent. And now it should give us like 53.4 even for, which was it? 4 stars, 3 stars, 85.8. Before was 53.4 and 006. Okay, so this works, but the extension, hold on, is that, I think that's it for the, it says write 1 to 2 functions that help reduce redundant code. Like I said, the filter by stars, style, and country are so similar that they probably could be in their own function, but sending it like an extra parameter of which list to compare it to. Okay, sending something to parameters is useful, obviously. The more customizable you can make it, the more generalized it is. But we'll leave that there. We are going to make this function round to tenths, round to whatever we want. We aren't going to change its name, even though it won't be to tenths anymore. So in order to round to tenths, excuse me, in order to round to any number of decimals, we still want the number that the user wants rounded, but we want also however many places to round it. And we are going to have, that means when we call it, we need to send it 2 parameters. And the first one, I mean, it shouldn't matter what you type in for this because it's just going to do it. It's just going to make it work. But when we call it, we send what number we want to round and however many numbers we want it to be rounded to, however many decimals. And when we define it, we are just giving those things names to use. Okay, so we could work it all into this one line, but we're going to do it in steps. So we already have our variable number. And what is number? Each one of these is going to get, it's going to be number being reassigned to something based on itself. The algorithm for how to work around AppLab's rounding block is, if we wanted to round to 2 decimal places, we would multiply by 100, round it, divide by 100. Okay, 2 decimal places, 100 is the multiplier. If we wanted to round it to 1 decimal place, we would multiply by 10, round it, divide by 10. Okay, the first and last step will be the same number, but it's always going to be 10 times, 10 to the power of however many places we want rounded. So number is going to get itself times, we'll just do, let's get a times in there because it's going to get messy in a second. Number is going to get itself times whatever is, we want math.pow. We haven't used math.pow before. It is exponents. It is, the first number is the, I don't know what the proper terms are for exponents, the base and the power. the first one is the first number in this .pow block is the base, and the second one is to what power. So in order to, if we wanted one place, we would multiply it by 10. If we wanted two places, multiplied by 100. So it's always going to be 10 raised to the power of places, whatever number we send as the number of places. Then we're going to round number. So number is going to get math.round of itself. Number is going to get math.round of itself. And then we need to back it out however much we multiplied it by. So we are going to give number, the division. We're going to give itself divided by the same thing as before, math.pow of 10 to the power of places. This makes it an adjustable function rather than only rounding to tenths. We can round to hundreds and thousands or anything. I wonder if you put 0 in there, it would probably break it, and we would use a guard clause to keep it from breaking. How would we check? Well, let's just run it real quick. And then we want to return number, which is what has happened over this period. And let's test it. Okay, let's create a number. We'll call it num. And let's just make it a long decimal. Go for it. And we need an output. So we'll just have a console log. And we will console log round to tenths, even though it's not to tenths anymore, and send it 2 parameters. So the first one being the number we want to round, which in this case is num for our test. And how many places? Let's start with 3 places. And we hit run, and we should get 3.123. And if we round it to 4 places, we should get 3.1234 or 1235. Yes, of course, because 5 rounds up. But we're asking for a function that rounds, and it does. So here we know this works. Actually, we don't know it works. Let's find the edge case. If we do to the power of 0, I bet it breaks. No. Oh, yeah, of course, because 10 to the power of 0 is just 1. Okay, so it works. Oh, it even works for that. Yeah, we don't need a guard clause. And so our round to tenths should still work, except we need to send it however many decimal places we want. If we only want tenths, we could leave it at 1. And the other place we used it was here down in percent of total, which, see what happens when we only send it 1 parameter, even though it's expecting 2. I bet it breaks. First, let's do something and see if we got, yeah. So wait, did I leave it at 2? Yes, I left it at 2. Let's see if it works with 3, which is style cup. Should see if it has more than 2 decimal places. There we go, 3 decimal places. So this function works in many cases, but the one I want to test is if percent of total works when you only send it a single parameter when it's expecting 2. I actually think it might kind of work. No, not a number. My mistake. So you do have to send it a second parameter in order for it to work. Let's try that. And I think we're getting close to Dunzoid. Yeah, so 3 decimal places, but you recall that decimal was a whole bunch of zeros. So it's not going to see it there. There we go, 3 decimal places. So you don't have to do 3 decimal places, but it does show that it works. And you do need to do this as part of the assignment. Okay, so that is it for instruction for lesson 3, ramen rating. like I said before, one of the things you're going to do next week will be lesson 3 Netflix Navigator, which is the other one from this. And there'll be a walkthrough for that. Okay. I'm going to end the recording so it can start processing.